Hello everyone, today I wanted to make a quick video showcasing shiny.leptos and teaching you how to understand the basics of shiny.leptos. So shiny.leptos is a library that allows you to build UI libraries for R using the leptos library in Rust. So basically it allows us to make new UI components, either inputs or outputs for Shiny using Rust. So let's create a new R package. Let's do use this, create package, and let's call this leptos showcase, something like this. Right, so that's gonna go ahead and create an R package, leptos showcase. Let me do a git init, because why not? And there you go, we have an R package. So to start using shiny leptos, what we need to do is do shiny.leptos init. Once it's initialized, we're gonna have a couple of different directories that we're gonna be able to use. So if we take a look here, we're gonna see we have source TS for TypeScript, SAS for SAS/CSS, and RS for Rust. Mostly we're gonna be working on the RS and TS side of things, but yeah, we also have this r/attach dependencies that allows us to attach the different JavaScript and WebAssembly components to it. So let's get started on how we can start building a UI. So to build a new UI component, we're going to have to know whether it's an input or an output. Based on that, things are going to be kind of determined. So for Shiny inputs, which is I think the easiest one to understand, we can do shiny.leptos new input component. And then we give it a name. So I'm going to give here, let's create a basic, I don't know, text input, right? So let's create showcase text input, something like that, right? This is going to go ahead and create a bunch of files. We're going to take a look at those files right now, but yeah, okay, let's take a look at those files. So this is going to go ahead and create showcase text input .ts, .rs, and .r. So the rs one, this is the Rust code of the actual component. Here we have a bunch of things. We have input state, we have the actual input component, and we have some boilerplate to attach the showcase input to the UI, to update it in case we want to update it from the server side, getting the value, and subscribing to any changes. So let's actually build a text input in here. So if we take a look here at showcase input state, we have value, we have read write signal. And this read write signal, we can turn it into, for example, here it takes a double because the default is basically a counting button. But we can put in a string, for example. And now that we have a string, let's change this from a button. Let's do button, instead of button, let's do input and type text. And here we can use bind and value equals state.value, for example. And now we can have a class, for example. And yeah, I think this is basically all we need to have a very basic text input, right? It's not the most complex of components, but if you know leptos, basically you can do a lot of things. It's not just limited to text and basic inputs. But yeah, well, let's do something not very complex. This is a showcase at the end of the day. So here for the initial value, again, it's not going to be a double anymore. I mean, it's going to be a string. And it could be empty, but I really don't want to deal with empty values. So I can do initial value, and instead of unwrap, or let's do an unwrap or else, or we can do an unwrap or default, because the default of a string is an empty string. So we can do that, no issues. We need to update how we update the value. So now instead of taking a double, we're going to take a string again. This should work. To get the value, we're no longer going to be returning a double. We're going to be returning a string. So this should work, and I think that's it on the Rust side of things. I think we don't have to change anymore. Now we would need to head to the TypeScript side of things. So let's go to showcase input.typescript. And here again, we already have all the boilerplate here. We're not getting, how do you call it? We're getting a bunch of errors, mainly because we haven't built our how do you call it? Our library. And since we haven't built our library, it hasn't downloaded like jQuery and all the other dependencies. So yeah, we're gonna get a bunch of errors, but remember, this is temporary. We're not gonna get this forever. Right here, the main thing that that we can take a look is here. We don't need to parse the value anymore, right? It's not a longer a float. It's basically just a string. So we can do something like this, right? And we can do a check if initial value is equal to null. We can return basically, but yeah, this should be basically a string. And I don't know in TypeScript if we can do either a string or undefined, I would guess, undefined. So this should maybe work. And here if it's undefined, and here we return initial value. Right, so I think this should work. This looks good to me. I don't know. And again, for the set value, this should work fine. Set value, we shouldn't really need to change anything else because we're no longer, that's the only place where we actually parse something. Cool. So I think that's it for the TypeScript side of things. Now we can move onto the R side of things. Here, value wouldn't really be a double. It should really be a string. And same on the update showcase text input. It should really be a string. And in this case, it would be good if we add if it's not character, is character input ID, not input ID really. It should like value, right? So if it must be a string, and if length of value is not equal to 1, we should also error out just in case. And we should probably do the same right here, right? So I think we can set it up like that. And I think that's it. Let's create a little example app. So I'm gonna here call library shiny, and let's do devtools load all, just so that we don't have to install the package every time. And let's create a little fluid page, and let's use our showcase text input, right? We should already have that function loaded. So let's call this text, and let's give it a value of hello YouTube. On the server side of things, let's do an observed event. And I would rather do something like a verbatim text output. And here we can do output text equals render print. That looks good to me, and we can call in the shiny app. And now if we go into R and do a shiny, let's first do a shiny.leptos.build. So this will actually go ahead and build our TypeScript and our Rust. So you can see it's compiling the Rust code right now. If our Rust code were to not compile for any reason, we should see the error right here. But I am very confident this code is gonna compile no issues. So let's give it a second. Cool. So it seems like it has built. We can now go ahead and do a shiny run app. And if we go to this URL right here, we should see our text input, hello YouTube, and we can see that it's working as expected, right? So yeah, this does exactly what we wanted to do. So now let's build an output, right? So for example, we can start with shiny.leptos, new output component, and let's call this, I don't know, showcase text output. I know it's not very creative, but I'm gonna go with that. And this is gonna create a bunch of other files. So this is gonna create showcase text, right? So we have this showcase text file in R, and this brings the render showcase text. So this is how we render the value, and then we have our showcase text output. So this is basically the actual output that we put into the UI. And by default, we already have a text. So we create here the div, and on the Rust side of things, we can see that we have showcase outText.rs. And basically what we're doing here is we have a paragraph, and inside the paragraph we put in the data, which in this case is, how do you call it? A string, right? So we should replace this with whatever data we actually need. What we can do to make this perhaps a little bit more interesting is have it, I don't know, do something based on the, how do you call it, on the, for example, the length of the text, maybe, I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe we should just leave it like that and have it like be bold instead of just a simple boring paragraph, right? So we can put here PB data and PV BP, sorry, and yeah, this should just work out of the box. And we can go ahead and modify this however it best suits our case. So if we go back to the app, we should be able to replace this verbatim text output with showcase text output. And let's call this text so that we replace our verbatim text. And here, instead of render print, now it would be render showcase text, right? And this should work. So I'm going to do the leptos build again. You can see here leptos build, shiny leptos build. And this is going to recompile. It's going to build our WebAssembly. It's going to rebuild everything. And we should be able to run the app again. So if we run the app again and we go here, we can see now we have our little bold thing we added, right? Hello, YouTube. And it basically just works, right? You can see that everything is working as expected. So if you want to learn more about Shiny Laptos, I will leave in the description a little Git repository that has a bunch of input components. We're going to be adding more, even output components to this showcase. But this is just a little way that you can get started. So here we have a counter input. So every time I click it, it counts more and we get it as an input. We have the text input that we just created. We have group buttons. So you can see here we get the current value of whatever is being selected. We also have a dynamic text input, which is, this is like more interesting, right? We can remove values and we can add like a hello world, something, other thing, right? And it's gonna keep adding them to this list and we can see them, we get them the input and we can remove them as we want. And also like a color picker input, nothing very sophisticated, but something that we might want inside our Shiny app. And you can take a look at the code of every single one of them if you are interested. So yeah, I hope this was a very easy to digest introduction to Shiny Leptos.